now the latest around the wide world of tropics. Tropical Weather Bulletin for September 8th, 2020, September 9th now, as we do head to 0 UTC. And as we do head into 0 UTC, this is what we're going to be starting with, the worldwide shot of the Atlantic. And with me, I have the team tonight to discuss how the Atlantic is looking. I have Ryan Leahy, Mike, and David with me. How are all of you doing, and what are your thoughts on the Atlantic right now?
Good evening.
Hi.
Good evening.
So what are we thinking about the Atlantic?
Very interesting, to say the least. Gearing into peak season, it looks like.
Looks like we are kicking it into high gear when it comes to the Atlantic. We have tropical storms Renee and Paulette, both the earliest P and R named storms on record. This is the first time ever that these names have been used on this naming list. So it really is history that we're watching in the making right now with a very active Atlantic Ocean. We have quite a bit going on. We start with Invest 94L heading towards the east coast right now. That's an interesting development. The National Hurricane Center giving that a 40% chance of development within the next 5 days, 30% within the next 2. We have Tropical Storm Paulette, which has a very good-looking CDO on it, quite a bit of curving on it as well. That's looking excellent, actually, when it comes to its overall satellite appearance. Tropical Storm Renee has very little convection. I think that even 40 miles an hour is a generous estimate from the NHC. I think there's an argument to be made for a tropical depression. NHC has been mentioning it for the past few advisories. Finally, we have a powerful MCS over Africa. This is expected to become a significant tropical cyclone in the coming days as it heads into the main development region. National Hurricane Center giving that an 80% chance of development in the next 5 days. So with that being said, it is a record-breaking active Atlantic right now. And to the team, what are we thinking about when it comes to Paulette?
Well, it is a pretty interesting system to really watch. Again, it does look like it will stay out at sea and not... It could affect Bermuda, I would say, but I mean... I think that currently the chances of Paulette affecting the United States is pretty, I wouldn't say, I mean, it is unlikely, but there's still a possibility, but that's, again, way out into the future. That's like over 10 days out, and we can't, accurately forecast, exactly where Paulette is going to be at that time. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'd be inclined to agree. We have track guidance here for Paulette, and you can see a lot of that track guidance really is heading towards Bermuda by the time we're getting out into the day 7 range. So definitely something of concern. If you were to draw a cone around these models, Bermuda would definitely be very nearly within it. In the general track consensus, a lot of models don't take it too far away from Bermuda. So if you are in Bermuda, yeah, I'd agree with Ryan. It's probably an area that needs to be watching this. David, you were going to say something?
Yes, I'm just looking at the, not the public advisory, the other one. And whilst there are no coastal watches or warnings in effect, the location is near 18.7 degrees north, 44.3 degrees west, tracking towards the northwest at 7 knots. Estimated minimum central pressure of 995, but looking at the extended outlook for day 4 and 5, 150 nautical miles on day 4, 175 nautical miles on day 5, and for intensity near 15 knots each day. So I think there's a lot of uncertainty where it's going to end up. So this is another system that will need close monitoring. And again, Thomas, what's going on with the steering mechanisms? What's happening in the North Atlantic and over America to force it rest northwest, or even west?
Well, I think the GFS model here, which I have pulled up, will probably explain this in a justified manner. We have a low near the Azores. We were concerned that that could become a subtropical development. Those chances are out the window at this point. But the wave axis is allowing for a break in this ridge that we can see way to the north, and that could allow for recurvature of Paulette. And you'll see Paulette takes advantage of this with time, but latest model runs actually take it farther south, but still do give that recurvature, as there is a small break in the ridge before we do get another one. Basically, it's a troughing mechanism that's going to pick this storm up, David, that could bring it out to sea. The question is not whether the storm will make a northward turn, it's when will the storm make a northward turn. That's the big question. Models seem to have a decent grip on it, actually, looking at this intensity guidance, with a pivot occurring at about the 60-hour point towards the north. And if we take a look at the tightest consensus, we can see a generally good consensus towards Bermuda there. So that's currently what I would be most inclined to predict. Notable exceptions to that, the GFS does take it farther out, and I believe the Euro is similar to the tight track guidance. So I'd probably go with the tightened track guidance on this particularly.
So you're going for that one that you just outlined,
Yeah.
or further west, northwest, or even northwest?
I think that odds are that it'll probably go about where I outlined. You can see compared to official forecasts, though, we do continue to see an eastward shift in track, though. These black lines here are the official forecast. That's the NHC center points. And you can see all track guidance is east of that. So that eastward shift is definitely something to note. When it comes to intensity guidance is, well, that's quite uncertain. If we take a look at the general consensus, we're probably going to see maybe a Cat 1 peak, probably 70 to 75 miles an hour before we see weakening in the short term. And then towards the end of the forecast period, we'll see a re-strengthening, H-Wharf in particular being notable. Discard these models up here. These models are not to be used for tropical cyclone intensity. At least I don't use them. I disregard them. And you can even see their initialization of intensity is not correct. So I wouldn't be using those too much. Alright, well, we've talked about Paulette quite a bit. What are we thinking of Renee, or the sad excuse of a tropical storm that Renee has become? What are we thinking? Alright, well, here's what we're looking at with Renee. It's got very little convection on it, and with that very small amount of convection, that really means that it's not overly robust. Its structure is not overly good, and this is kind of bizarre because shear is relatively low right now, and the storm is over warm waters. So the reason for this lack of robust convection is not entirely clear. I don't think that the National Hurricane Center exactly knows either. So yeah, I'm kind of confused about that, but I think that objective intensity estimates do still all, yeah, they all show it being a tropical storm, so you can justify tropical storm intensity from ADT, AMSU, and the SATCOM, all showing 35 to even 40 miles an hour. 40 knots, my bad. 40 to 45 miles an hour. That's definitely something to keep in mind there. And finally, we have Invest 94L. This is the Invest right now. You can kind of see the axis of the wave, this tropical wave that's expected to move towards the east coast. The odds of genesis are relatively low. You can see most models don't even take it to a tropical storm, but there's one that does, but again, that's a statistical model. I wouldn't put too much stock into that, but it's not impossible if the storm forms. Again, the National Hurricane Center does give it a 40% chance of formation in the next 5 days. The bigger concern is the MCS over Africa that has an 80% chance of formation. And if we actually take a look at the GFS model, I believe that other models also take it pretty strong. We'll take a look at the Euro just as a point of reference. We can see the evolution generally of these storms real quick. So 94L we'll start with because that is the most immediate concern to land, and then we will go out to Paulette, Renee, and the wave behind it, and just talk about what exactly is going on with those. So the Euro in particular shows 94L being an open wave all the way up to land. This is the most likely scenario for 94L. It could develop into a tropical depression. Regardless, you're going to be getting strong winds and some heavy rain. So you're going to be getting those 35 to 40 mile an hour winds. Heavy rain, really regardless of whether it develops or not. When it comes to Paulette and Renee, we'll start with Paulette. Euro predicts some deepening in the short term. This is what we've been thinking. And then longer term, we see significant weakening. And Euro actually kills it off by day 5. Now, models don't really know what to do. Some, and most, keep it as a tropical cyclone and redevelop it by day 5. Euro stretches it out so much at that point, you don't have a tropical cyclone left to recover. When it comes to Renee, we see strengthening in the short term, and then we see Renee lasting for quite a while. And the Euro just develops a train of storms. This is the low that has an 80% chance off the coast of Africa. You can see a storm develops behind that, and a storm potentially developing behind that one. So Euro has a train going on when it comes to storms and tropical cyclones. So that's definitely something interesting to note. Alright, well, now that we've talked about everything that's really going on in the Atlantic, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, anything like that, please feel free to let us know. Just tag Force13 as time does go on. So just tag Force13, we'll answer your questions. So let's begin. I know some questions have already come in. We're going to start from the top and work our way down here. So I apologize if it does take us a while to get to your questions. First person that we see, feel like Paulette will get fast and go west instead of northwest. Certainly a possibility. Models do tend to have a weak bias when it comes to ridges, so it is certainly a possibility that we do see a westward shift. But the strange thing is guidance is actually at an eastward shift in recent runs. So I'd say really the biggest land interest right now that should be watching this is Bermuda. If you're along the U.S. East Coast, I'd say 94L is your bigger concern. And I'd say Paulette probably won't be a concern for the Bahamas and the East Coast. I could eat my words on that very well. It very well could be in the long term, but at least short term, I think Bermuda is the only real area that needs to be watching this within the next 7 days. All right.
And again, Thomas, it's going to be the strength and positioning is that high.
Yeah, it will be that. Just how quickly that high moves out and where that break in the ridge is going to be. Although I would expect that ridge will break before this could get to the East Coast. It very well could even pass Bermuda and make a close call. I don't see this heading into the East Coast. Again, I could eat my words on that, but I don't see it. Alright, another question. Any threats to Florida? This is another question. Short term, no. Long term, maybe. To the team, you have any thoughts on the potential threats to Florida in the middle to long term?
From Paulette?
Just in general.
Just in general. Well, there were a few interesting model runs that I have seen. It's well over 2 weeks. It's like 2 to 3 weeks out, showing some significant storms hitting Florida. But again, that is, I think it was like almost 3 weeks out. It's a very long time from now, so nothing to really worry about. But for now, within the next, in the forecastable future, no major threats to Florida.
Alright, and then we have another question, which kind of touches on what we've been talking about a little bit. What are the chances of Paulette and Renee reaching the Bahamas and the U.S.? So I think we just discussed Paulette pretty in detail. I don't see that happening with Paulette.
What about Renee?
Do we see that happening with Renee? I think that Renee is actually going to recurve sooner than Paulette when it comes to where it's going to be in the MDR.
Yeah, Renee is going to recurve really relatively soon. It'll probably head up north towards the Azores, most likely.
Yeah, and what we're seeing here is something funny on track guidance, and we've seen this multiple times. It looks like we're going to see kind of a curve from Renee, and it's
That
kind of going to
yes.
loop back around. And so, as David would like to say, it might make a loop-de-loop here
Don't
before
say
it heads
that.
out to sea. Yeah.
But
Oh, God.
I was looking at the tracks and I said, no, you're not going to the loop. But I think 94, 94 Earl. And Thomas, I've got to ask you, where is Nathan?
Well, Nathan's
That's a
out.
question being asked.
Nathan's out having a fun time. He's taking a little bit of a break. He's got a lot of stuff he's working on behind the scenes, though. So when he comes back, he'll come back
Yes.
swinging. We're gonna have a really active September, and he's gonna be back, and he's gonna have some exciting things for all of you. So, in his absence, you have to deal with me. So, moving on. How is the
Is
East
that
Coast
worth luck?
doing?
I had to, but
Yeah.
the viewers, there are others that can come on and provide the coverage. Nathan does have the support, and but keep firing the questions over to us, and we'll answer. But Thomas, I think 94 Earl. That's one that I'm monitoring.
Yeah, that's one that I'm monitoring as well. We actually have a question on 94L. How is that East Coast Invest looking? So, David, while you've been monitoring it, what have you found with 94L?
Well, again, read the steering mechanism. We're going to see these systems again. The mechanisms will come into play. We just got to wait and see. People should be preparing. Hopefully, we won't see what Law did to, stand corrected, the Carolinas, but a tropical depression, well, that's a possibility, but I think the region needs a few weeks quietness, but we know we're in the peak of the season, but people need to be prepared.
Yeah, I would be inclined to agree. All right, we have another question saying, how many more tropical systems can we expect this year? Um, and I think that could be a big number. Mike, were you going to say something about that?
The numbers of tropical cyclones this year, it's really hard to predict, especially with this unpredictable and most likely to be active September and possibly even early October. My guess would be an additional 5 to 7 named storms. That would just be my guess. But again, if you want to go ahead and touch on that, like I said, 5 to 7 named storms and about 2 to 3 more hurricanes, if not possibly more.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Certainly, I think that is possible. I mean, for the rest of the season, it's again really hard to say for sure because so much could happen. But I think that we could see at least. My guess is, I would say probably. Actually, this is tough. Because it's just there's so much uncertainty that I can't really make a good forecast for the total amount of. Although I can say, and I think I'm pretty certain with this, that I do not expect more than 10 additional named storms. I think that a total of 27 is the absolute highest that we will get. I could be wrong, but I hope that I'm right.
Yes, I think we all are hoping that you're right to some extent. Our next question, is there a chance that Paulette and Rene do the Fujiwara effect? So, for those of you that don't know, the Fujiwara effect is when two low pressure systems are close enough together that they can interact and they basically spin around each other in a counterclockwise fashion. Do we see that happening?
It is becoming less and less likely that these two systems are going to be interacting with each other. Both are moving to the west, to like the west-northwest. Renee is going to recurve earlier than Paulette does. They're going to stay a good distance away from each other, so they're probably not going to have any Fujiwara interactions.
And Thomas, just looking at the satellite imagery, what would the percentages be? And I'll ask Ryan, and I think Mike's there. Do you see any of these systems, Renee and Paulette, being a long-range system where the ACE increases?
I certainly could see both of them being pretty. I mean, I could call them ace machines, but they could be long-lived. It's kind of uncertain, though. You know exactly how strong they're both gonna get. But I think Paulette's going to be around for at least another week or so. So, and I think Renee will probably be about another week. So they're going to be, we're starting to get into, the part of the season where you start to get, long-tracked tropical cyclones. And we're definitely starting to see this with these two systems.
Yeah, for sure. I think that they could both be big ace makers, if you will. There have been some longer range model runs that show the peaks of these systems not happening within the next week, that their peak intensities will actually occur within the next 2 weeks instead of the next week. So it's going to be interesting to watch, that's for sure. All right, we have another question. Did the Caribbean Invest die? Yes, it did. It is dead.
It's long gone now, yeah.
It is definitely dead. Will Renee do a loop-de-loop? That's our next question. Definitely possible. Track guidance shows the beginnings of one, and if we take a look at the GFS, which I think will show it best, you can see Renee right there goes up, and it heads south. GFS actually takes it east and makes it do a massive loop. And then, don't even ask what that is. That's that next wave.
Oh my God!
That moves off the coast, and that's looking beefy on this run. If I go a run before it, you see it's nowhere near as beefy. So, don't put too much stock into that. But yeah, loop-de-loop for Renee, certainly a possibility.
But Thomas, looking at that model run, it's the positioning and strength of the high.
Yes, it is. It's precisely that, and that differs from model to model. But you can actually see that weakening in the high as Renee heads north, and then that re-strengthening as this new high budges in that prevents Renee from finishing its recurvature, that shoves it back south, and then moves it westward. And then again, we have this beast here that may not actually happen. Wouldn't put too much stock into that since the system hasn't even developed yet. But definitely a possibility. Next question: will Paulette and Renee both become major hurricanes?
I reckon Renee. Just looking at the model, I'm looking at the screen viewers, and just that this positioning, the strength of the high, and Renee looks like it's going to be forced across into the Caribbean.
I'm not sure, but that's just one model run. Renee's been everywhere, especially beyond the 5-day point. This is really long range stuff we're talking about, so we can't say with too much certainty where it's going to go. But I feel like that's one possible solution. We'll just have to see what happens. Something that's interesting, and please discount the model that makes Renee a Cat 5. Everything else here, including the H-Mod interpolated, that's all a possibility. The H-Mod interpolated showing a Cat 3 out of Renee. Biggest problem for it, though, And the reason why I'd use the lower end of intensity guidance, I'd have a hard time even justifying a hurricane peak at this point. Storm's not strengthening. It's got the conditions to do it, and it's not taking advantage of it. So to the team, do we have any idea why this is happening? Because I'm honestly kind of confused.
I won't answer that one, but what I would like to ask you, Tom, is can we have a look at the ocean heat content?
The ocean heat content. I can pull that up real quick.
And I think the one that's got the anomaly, so I'm just...
Yeah,
that's
just a moment.
Another component that perhaps we should look at.
We're doing this on the air, folks. I'm going to get the ocean heat content real quick. And we can see those MPIs, those maximum potential intensities. So I have it on my screen here, and you can see those MPIs. You have your pressure up here and your winds down here, and you can see you have Cat 4 plus MPIs throughout basically the entirety of the tropical Atlantic, well into the Cat 5 range, through quite a bit, near the Bahamas, East Coast. So, I mean, you could have a long track MDR storm that could really take advantage of this ocean heat content. But we'll just have to see.
And another thing that I just thinking about, Thomas, no Saharan dust.
Yeah, Saharan dust has become less of an issue with time. And it appears we do have Ethan with us now. Ethan, how are you?
Just fine. Just hopping in here just now to cover tropical cyclones that are currently ongoing. Quite a busy situation that we have in the Atlantic, I hear.
Yeah, it's very busy. We have Paulette, Rene, we have the area of interest in Africa, and we have 94L, which is targeting the East Coast. So we have quite a bit going on when it comes to this. And looks like you have something on your screen, Ethan?
Yeah, this is the model guidance right now for track 4 Paulette. You can see it's generally a west-northwest motion at the moment. This does change. Models do vary once we get very high out. Some take off towards the north. These are interpolated models. This could happen, honestly. And some do also take it off towards the northwest. And I did hear that some ensemble models were taking this system towards the U.S. Gulf Coast. That's very long range. I don't think that'll happen. And at the moment, the most likely situation regarding Paulette is a storm recurving and heading out to sea. Now, regarding Renee, let me just pull up Renee here. There's Renee. We're generally looking at a westward motion for the next 24 to 36 hours, then a gradual turn toward the north, and this storm will not be affecting land at all beyond this point, at least at the tropical entity, at least. So, story of Renee affecting land is coming to a close.
Yes, at least for now. Now, ultra long range, we have some pretty wacky solutions. But in the near future, yeah, absolutely not when it comes to that potential threat for Renee. So definitely.
Yeah, I've just been told that supposedly the latest GFS run apparently wants this new wave emerging off of Africa that has a 80% chance of development to be a Caribbean cruiser, so-called to speak. And what that means in our terms is a storm that tracks through the Caribbean Sea. Now, I'm just going to pull up the GFS run now to see what's going to happen with this system. And I'll show that on my screen here.
I just spoiled the fun for you, but here, I'll let you go through it. But the viewers just saw something pretty crazy. If you want to take a look at it.
Yeah, this is the first time that I'm seeing it for myself, so you're seeing my raw reaction here. So you can see there's Paulette and there's Renee. You'll have strong wind shear in this area, which is going to weaken these storms for the time being. Renee, in this case, will ultimately die because of that shear. So you can obviously see there's Paulette weakening due to that strong wind shear affecting the storm. And this will probably keep it relatively weak as it passes through the area. But then you can see the pressure begins to drop again, and there's that area of interest emerging off of Africa. So it wouldn't surprise me going into this weekend if we have a tropical depression or a tropical storm near the Cape Verde Islands again, unfortunately. So those islands are going to get another glancing blow probably again. Now, what's interesting here I'm noting is that GFS does indeed intensify Renee again after it makes that turn towards the north. So who knows what the system is going to do after this? It's got quite an uncertain future ahead of it, and it seems to be broadening out Renee. I mean, not Renee. Paulette here, Thomas.
Yeah, and the Euro actually downright kills it before day 5. Kills Paulette. So,
Now, do any of the other models follow through on that?
not that I know of, no. But the Euro is a respectable model.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the more well-known models out there. But we're looking at the GFS for the time being. It's actually moving Renee off towards the west-southwest and
Yes.
intensifying it. And there's that quite clearly that that area of interest. That's doesn't really become a Caribbean cruiser per se, but it's becoming quite a strong storm right there. 960 millibars. That's probably a major hurricane right there
Just go into
to
the
the
ultra
northeast
long
of Rhode
range, and
Island.
I want to see your reaction on what the GFS does with this.
Does it take it to the 940s?
You're about to find out.
It does take a little bit for the hours to load due to my internet connection. Yeah, it doesn't surprise me. So, favoring climatology, this will probably be very similar. I'm getting comparison vibes with Hurricane Earl back in 2010. I'm really getting comparison vibes with this, both on track and intensity.
I would
So,
say, though, if you look at the previous run, that storm is not there at all.
Is there any way we could have a look at an analog for that one that you're talking about, Ethan?
yeah, I'll pull that up right now, track wise. You see,
Yeah, just a track because
Well,
it's just a
while you're pulling that up,
and
let's get to some more questions. Um, is it possible that Renee will completely dissipate? I mean, I guess so. Uh, it's not been taking advantage of its environment as of late, so that's certainly a possibility. And let's just get to a couple more here. Uh, we have we have quite a few more actually to get to, but we're doing our best. Uh, Here, Ethan. What's our track on Earl looking like?
So this was the track of Hurricane Earl back in 2010. This is obviously off of Wikipedia, which is the best source I can get at the moment. Now you can see it was generally weak until it got near land as a tropical cyclone, and then it really intensified to a peak of 145, 150, I believe. And then it Iowa replacement cycled and then became a Category 4 hurricane again. So this is the time of the season where major hurricanes are more likely to form and stronger storms, and the MDR wakes up and all of a sudden you have tropical cyclone after tropical cyclone. So going back to the GFS model, I've got the full run loaded up here. There's just a few things that I want to point out real quick, Thomas, if you don't mind.
Yeah, it's fine.
So I'll put this into motion. You can see there's Paulette and Renee. And you can see, I'll pause it right there. So you have that 2080 area of interest right here, which isn't in invest yet. Then you have this feature right here. That's just west of the Cape Verde Islands. I wonder if that's a tropical cyclone. It appears to be a weak one. Probably a tropical depression right there. But it'll be
That's what-
interesting to see what this does. I know that the Euro in particular is pretty keen on this becoming a hurricane, if I'm not mistaken. So it's pretty long range, but anything could happen. And I'm just let this speak for itself when it comes to Renee's track. It's still alive right there on the outer bands of that 2080 system. And at this point, Renee, at least on the GFS, could be a long storm.
That's the one that it's got my eye, and there's something. I had another question, but well, I'll come back to that.
All right.
Icon.
Well, we have
the icon model. Is that one showing up anything?
Well, let's go take a look at that real quick. I'll pull it up here. The icon shows Paulette and Rene there. You can see David as it takes 92L. I think it actually does undergo genesis into a TD on the icon. Yes, it definitely does. And you can see there
94.
Paulette and Rene. Yeah, 94 is a tropical cyclone on the icon. And then genesis also occurs.
I will say the icon in particular has been extremely keen on 94L becoming a tropical cyclone off the Gulf Coast. That's one thing that I've been consistently noting on the icon model.
And
will that actually happen? That remains to be seen. What, David?
And what about sea surface temperature? Isn't the ocean heat content, the sea surface temperature, isn't that a breeding ground for further development?
I mean, it's good enough. It's definitely capable of taking it to development. Yeah. All right, now we have a ton of questions, so we're just going to do basically a rapid-fire round of questions. Is it possible we reach Greek names this month? Yes, to the team. What do we think the odds are that we'll hit Greek names this month? Honestly, I think it's better than 50%.
I'd give it 85%. I think we're going to do it because just the overall pattern this season favors tropical wave emerging after tropical wave after tropical wave. It's going to be quite the train, I guess you could say.
How many more systems before we get to the Greek alphabet? How many more?
I believe it's 4.
Yeah, we need 4. We need in total to reach the Greek names. We need 5 in total, but to exhaust the actual naming list that we're on right now, we need 4 systems, and we could easily be at 4. We could honestly even be at Greek names in 3 weeks, maybe even pushing 2.
And what's the next name off the African coast? Is that going to be Sally?
Yep, and
depends on if 94L develops first.
Oh, right, yes. So 94L could get Sally.
It could. I think the odds are it won't, but it's not impossible. So
now, sorry, I was just going to ask this question, Sally. When's the last time we've seen Sally?
Never.
Never.
Yep, it's never been used.
Right.
It was put on the list way back when they made the naming list, and this is the first time that it's being used.
So, Thomas, currently on my screen, I've got the satellite imagery pulled up for the Atlantic. This is the best one that I can do for the time being. And there's just a few things that I want to point out to the viewers that I've been pointing out to you guys a little bit. So, right here we have Paulette looking quite a, how did I say that's quite normal for a 65 mile per hour tropical storm. Is that Renee?
Yes. Here we have a new ASCAP pass that came out recently. I'm just gonna put this up on the screen, and all of you will be able to see it shortly. I think that this
is a TD.
It'll speak for itself. If that's not a TD, I don't know what is. I'm not even seeing any 25 knot barbs on the latest ASCAT
So,
pass
Thomas,
for Renee.
could you perhaps try to explain what that is to the viewers and how to read an ASCAP pass?
So ASCAT is a wind sampling instrument. Basically, it can pass over different parts of the planet, and it collects data as to wind direction and speed. This is really important because it can get down to surface level and it can tell us whether a storm is a tropical cyclone and how intense it is. It does tend to undersample because of its lack of resolution, but regardless of that, what you're seeing here is basically a bunch of wind barbs. So, for example, the wind is heading the opposite direction the barb is facing. So if a wind barb is facing like this, your wind is actually like this. So you would actually call this the wind is headed to the northwest in that case. But what you can see is we do have a closed center of circulation. So it would be a TD, but this is definitely a tropical depression at this point. No way that's a tropical storm. To the team, do you think there's any way this is a tropical storm with that ASCAT?
No, no, that's
Probably
definitely
not. I
it's
would
not even.
run. I would run with an intensity estimate of 35 miles per hour right now.
I think that might be a bit generous. That could be 30, but I don't know.
It doesn't look healthy, does it?
No,
No, it
not at
doesn't.
all.
But I mean, models are keen on having a part 2 to this system, so
We'll see if it ever
maybe it'll
figures
happen.
out how to intensify, then maybe. But as of now, it's been defying the odds and in a good way.
So Thomas, I'm sure that you've been looking at the satellite imagery, right? And you've noticed these 2 tropical waves over Africa, I'm assuming.
Absolutely.
So currently on my screen, you've got those 2 Africa waves. I'll put this into motion here. And you can really see, so on the left, we have the area of interest that is currently marked by the National Hurricane Center. 20% chance in 48 hours, 80% in 5 days. This will most likely become a tropical cyclone. Every model's on board with this becoming a system. So this will probably become Teddy, probably. Now, this system behind it has had my attention. Some models have been picking up on this developing. Most do. So it wouldn't surprise me, that actually would be Sally, wouldn't surprise me if this would become the T name, which would be Teddy. And behind it, there's some ramblings that we could even be seeing something out of this cluster of thunderstorms near the Indian Ocean, even potentially on the line. So it's that season. It's that time of the year where we get wave after wave emerging off of Africa. Busy time ahead.
It is a really busy time. Alright, well, we've only got 15 minutes left, so we're going to spend the rest of the stream answering questions. We're just going to drill through these as quickly as we can here. Is the wave coming behind Renee going to hit the Florida or Gulf Coast? We have no idea. Way too far out.
Could go anywhere.
Anything is possible with the system emerging off of Africa. It could go through the Caribbean Sea and end up in Central America. It could go do what I said with Hurricane Earl and stay weak throughout the main development region and become a powerful hurricane just east of the Bahamas and go out to sea.
Certainly.
It could not even form at all. So
that's true. All right, we have some more questions. Who's on the team tonight? Myself, Thomas Schwent. We have David, Mike, Ethan, and Ryan here as well. All really respectable team members. Moving on, could Renee be a depression right now? Looks like one. Yes, we are sure it is at this point. Why is Renee not gaining strength? Do we have any speculation on that?
Wind shear.
I mean, wind shear, and it did go over the Cape Verde Islands, so that might have helped to disrupt the storm as well.
Ryan, those islands are incredibly small, and I highly doubt that islands that small would disrupt that storm. I just want to check water vapor imagery real quick to see what the environment's looking around the storm water vapor wise.
And can we have a look at the wind shear?
Yeah, while you're pulling that up, I've got to drill through some more questions here. Here we go. what do we think about the AOI over Africa? Could the peak of the season be later than usual? I think we're in the thick of it right now.
I don't know.
I don't know if we're at the peak. The
I
peak
That's a
could
good
certainly be
question.
late September, early October. Honestly, I think it's more likely than not it'll be a late September, early October peak at this point.
Honestly, I think that for a year, like in really active years, you don't usually get like a sharp peak. I mean, sometimes you can, like 2017 or maybe even 2004, but like in a year like this, I think that you would most likely see most of like the highest amount of activity would probably be in a window between now and let's say early October. That would be my guess.
Yeah, alright. Well, I have some more things here. Um, what's the general look of the Pacific right now? Julio could redevelop. That's pretty much it. We also have Invest 96W, which is unlikely to develop, but is looking fairly robust. That's what we're looking at in the Pacific. Alright, some more questions. Long range GFS models suggest a system impacting Florida. What do we think of that? Like we've said, it's too far to tell. Um, Alright, let's see if we have any more. Another question. Could 94L pull off a Bertha? Certainly possible. We'll just have to see with time. Alright, moving on. Can any of these storms make landfall? They certainly can. I think the team probably has some thoughts on that. What are we thinking about landfalls right now?
Paulette, no. Renee, no. The 2080 area of interest, possible. The area of interest behind that one, possible as well. Too early to tell, I'd say.
Alright, moving on from that, we're gonna move on to some more questions. Could there be a subtropical system near the Azores?
Yeah, I've been watching that interesting feature near the Azores. It has the potential to become a tropical cyclone, but at this time, we're just waiting and seeing what it does. The National Hurricane Center honestly should be marking it right now. If they aren't, then I don't know what they're up to. But I'd probably give that a 20% chance of development or around that area.
Alright, moving on. We're gonna see what else we have. Could Paulette pull off an Andrew track? Um,
No.
Apparently the Weather Channel said it was possible.
No.
I mean, it's.
No.
I mean, listen. It depends on ridge strength. If the ridge rebuilds and Paulette's still alive when we get the whole thing with Renee, technically, there's a chance that it has a similar track. Intensity, probably not. With the current pattern. So I'm gonna go with a solid no on both.
Yeah, if we're going to get another major hurricane this season, our best shot at this moment is that 80% area of interest, I think. That's their best shot, I think.
Yeah. All right. Well. So we have some more questions. Could the two tropical storms push shear away like Margot did for Laura? Like Marco did for Laura. They typed Margot. I assume they mean Marco did for Laura. Um, I don't think that Paulette or Renee are going to affect the environment too much of the future areas of interest. All right.
Paulette might, though. As it moves off towards the west northwest, it's got dry air in front of it, and it's been fending that off for a while now, and it's been doing quite well. But probably, Paulette will probably push the quote unquote push, I'd say, the dry air out of the way for Renee. However, shear is going to be the big question. Because right now, Renee is dealing with a little bit of dry air and pavement. But for the most part, it's wind shear. That's impeding on Renee right now.
Yeah, and with that being said, we're going to move on to some more questions here. What should I expect from 94L? I live in Sumter, South Carolina. The worst that you could expect is some gusty winds, maybe 40 to 45 mile an hour wind gusts, and some heavy rain. That's really it. Not expecting any flooding or anything like that out of this. So those are the worst of the impacts from 94L. All right. Moving on, let's see what other questions we have, because we have a lot of them. All right. So just a moment. Could any of these storms make major hurricane landfalls in the United States? I think it's way too far out to tell. The technical answer is yes. The proper answer is too far out to tell whether this is going to happen or not. I can't really give you a yes or no with any sort of certainty on whether any of these will make landfall. All right.
Yeah, I think that's a good assessment.
Yes. Why is the H-Wharf saying on the 0Z run that 94L will be a hurricane? Because the H-Wharf is nuts. Do you
I'm
think...
going to double check that.
Yeah, we can go check that out here in a moment. We've got 8 minutes left. Could any of the storms... Oh, we just did that. We'll see. We'll see. Even though Renee is likely a TD, it seems to be reorganizing in the latest frames. What are our thoughts on this? Let's see, how's it been reorganizing in the latest frames? There's actually is a decent convective burst near the center now that's starting to go up. So that could be signs of something. We'll see if it manages to pull it off. Alright, next question. What do we think that cluster of storms close to or under Paulette could do? I'm not sure which one you're referring to. The cluster over Paulette is the CDO of what's probably a rapidly strengthening storm to some extent right now. It's probably going to be a 70 mile per hour storm here sooner rather than later. I guess I wouldn't go as far as to say rapid strengthening, but it's establishing a really good looking CDO right now, and I wouldn't be surprised if it starts strengthening pretty quickly. The cluster to the south, I think that's not going to be much more than just a cluster to the south, really. We have Here's a crazy question. Could there be 4 to 5 simultaneous tropical cyclones next week? Odds are no, but technically...
3 to 4.
Technically, it's not out of the question. I'd say 3 to 4, yeah, that's the more likely. But 4 to 5, I'm not going to rule it out, but I'd say 3 to 4 is most likely. I'd say once you get up to 5, that's pretty unlikely. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Again, I'm not going to completely rule it out. Alright. And, let's see. Alright, so now we have another question on the intensity estimate of Paulette. Are we going with 65 like NHC is, or are we going to go with 70? So we went with 65 at top of the hour. We went with slightly lower pressure of 993 millibars. You can actually see that on your screen right now. I think that there's an argument to be made for going with 70 miles per hour. We might run with that later. We'll probably have an intensity update out here in a couple hours. So you can see that on our Twitter and Facebook pages. Alright, more questions. Is it possible Paulette becomes a hurricane before it starts weakening due to shear? Yes. It's actually a pretty decent possibility right now. It's got about 12 to 24 hours to do it. And yeah, I could see it doing that. I could see it pulling off hurricane strength. To the team, what do you think?
I don't think it'll get there.
I mean, I'm currently trending towards no, but it's not out of the question.
Yeah, certainly. I think it could go either way, really. Regardless, it's not going to really change much when it comes to land impacts, because it's not going to be impacting any land anytime soon. Alright, next question. What are sea surface temperatures for Renee? 29 to 30 degrees. No, I think it's 28 to 29, actually. Regardless, they're very warm, and they're going to actually continue to warm up with time. All right. Could we show water vapor? I'd assume of Renee. Does anyone have water vapor for us?
I did briefly, but it wasn't showing much in terms of Renee. There was a little bit of less dry air off towards the, well, more dry air off towards the northwest of the center.
Okay.
But nothing much. There's a ton off to the west and southwest of Paulette, though.
Mike, you have it pulled up. What are you seeing?
Going back to what Ethan said, we have a little bit of dry air right here on the western quadrant of the system towards the east, the west. It's really not going to be much of an issue in terms of a weakening trend for the system. So, yeah, going back to what Ethan said, I don't think it's going to weaken the storm at all.
All right. With that being said, let's see. We have some more questions. Do we think Renee still has a shot of becoming a hurricane? I think if it does, it's not a big shot. Unless it really starts to organize.
Now, with what the GFS and the Euro model are showing, is the system supposedly has a part 2 to this, according to those models. Will that happen? That remains to be seen. But I think that if Renee's going to have a shot of hurricane status, it's going to be during that part 2 and part 3.
All right, we have we're going to answer a final couple of questions before we go off the air. We have one saying, how favorable are conditions within the Gulf right now? When should we expect another Gulf system? From a climatological perspective and analog perspective, I think right now the Gulf is going to be pretty quiet for the next week or two. I would honestly be surprised if we don't see a significant storm in the Gulf of Mexico in October. So I'd really be watching, especially in October if you're in the Gulf of Mexico. All right.
Yes, and plus the ocean heat content and sea surface temperatures are pretty low right now in the Gulf of Mexico due to Laura still. They have not recovered still. So
we're still getting 29 and 30, aren't we? Like they're not that low.
Yeah, they're not that low, but they weren't what they were before.
That's true.
How long does it normally take for the conditions to get back? A couple of weeks or longer?
It normally takes...
they're back by now.
Yeah, I think it's just, you have an insane storm like Laura can make things like that difficult. All right, our final question of the night. When it comes to all this stuff, when could we see a Cat 5?
Late September, early October.
Wait and see. Yeah, late September, the second week of October, or even longer. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I mean, we're just going to have to wait and see. I'd agree with that. And
that's all we can do.
Yeah, for sure. And with all that being said, thank you all so much for watching this stream. We really do appreciate it. Here from St. Louis HQ, we're going to be signing off here. Again, thank you all so much for watching. To the team, any final thoughts?
Yes, Dr. Creeper. Yes, November the 1st, raining for probably the last week of October or mid-October to hear what the various weather agencies are going to say about the 21 cyclone season. But just briefly, keep an eye on the AU channel. We've got some major developments in the pipeline for that channel. And once again, it's been good. And we can't do it without you, your support, viewers. And back to you, Thomas.
All right. Anything else from the team before we go off the air?
This situation is a developing situation in the Atlantic, and there's watching.
All right. With that being said, we are going off the air again. Thank you all so much for watching, and we hope to see you in the next stream.
Force 13 has launched a merch store where you can support our project even more by showing our colours, just like this shirt I'm wearing. Or if the weather gets a bit colder, maybe this hoodie as well, of course. And of course, they go in all kinds of different varying colours. Or even pillows. I love a good pillow fight. Or even these amazing hurricane-themed phone cases. Or how about a drink out of this Force 13 mug? So you can find the wonders of Force 13's merch store online at store.force13.com. Ah! Oh! Who did that? Making its infamous landfall, Hurricane Michael is still a Category 3 as it enters the state of Georgia.